Welcome everybody to the Verts podcast. I'm your host, as always, Sonny Weaver. Alongside me today, maybe the most underrated, unknown, the guy you may have not heard of but probably should have. I've got Dustin Smith, or on Twitter, Equipment Guru from EA, with me today. How you doing, Dustin?
I'm having a great day. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. I'm glad you took some time out of your busy schedule to join us. As we're going to get ready to talk about you. You do a lot there at EA, especially around this the Madden season. So let's dive into that a little bit. So for our listeners that may not know exactly what it is you do, give us kind of a quick synopsis of what you touch, what your impact on Madden is.
So there's a ton of work, around just being a roster guy, ratings, changing player heads, all the fun things that are entailed in ratings, height, weight, body blends, depending on what size and shape a player is. Anything that's controlled by the DB, I'm going to have eyes and hands on. And then on top of that, I work a lot with our artworks team to help ensure the most authentic, based on time given, most authentic product we can put out there as far as uniforms, stadiums, player heads, and whatnot.
So, and that's a key point there, the most authentic based on what time will allow you. And I think that's probably the one thing that people lose sight of the most. So you guys released an article today kind of about the whole scanning process, and you guys got in a little bit of detail about that. So I want to touch on that real quick. Different pieces of equipment, different faces, things along those lines. Can you tell us a little bit about, let's say you guys release Madden 17 and you start looking towards next year. What's kind of that process of deciding what equipment you're going to try to bring into the game for the following year?
So there's no telling whether we can get more equipment next year or what we're going to get next year. That's always in flux. It's going to come down to creative leadership and what they choose to go with and where they choose to allocate sources and what they really want to focus on. So say there's a big feature we want to go on, right, but it's going to require some artworks time. Well, that means you're going to lose some room for your general updates, such as adding more heads or player equipment or anything like that. So whatever creative leadership decides from there and is passed down determines the amount of time artworks or some of us designers, producers, or anything are going to work on the following year.
So in that article, it mentioned taking the 250 plus pictures and all the different things and all the work that goes into doing something as simple as bringing a new pair of cleats into the game. Kind of just ballparking, how long would it take for that pair of cleats? What kind of man hours are we looking at to get that single pair of cleats into the game?
Oh man, you'd probably be better off asking our lead character artist Hen, who I work a lot with on that one, who spent more time on it. I'm more of the, hey, after it gets to X stage, I'm gonna work with you on fine tuning and getting it nice and perfect for colors and making sure your textures are this way and that the material tune is right and all those kinds of fun things. But as far as how long it takes for that really can vary from shoe to shoe, from glove to glove, depending on what person's working on it. I want to say we did get the Under Armour player exclusive retro. We did get that turned around relatively quick this year, as it was a late ad. I think it just only took 2-3 weeks or so. But that's not necessarily indicative of always how fast one turnaround would be.
Well, and I think that kind of highlights it. So you said that was a relatively quick ad, and you mentioned 2-3 weeks. That in the process of doing everything else that you guys do there, that's a lot of time for something as small as a single piece of gear.
Yeah, what most people would assume that just based on size and what it is, and it's just a swap part, that it's relatively simple, but due to all the things that run through that pipeline and how intricate, in particular, our shoes are, is that will really expand the timeline on how long something like that would take to turn around. Whereas our gloves, which are much more simplistic and require a lot less, took a lot less time to turn around.
So what's the process? And this, like you said, it may come down more from the creative guys at the top, but what's the process? How do you guys decide what gets added? I mean, brands, certain gear, certain types. I mean, I saw somebody was tweeting you about a helmet that I think maybe Fletcher Cox wears. That he's one of
Oh my
three
goodness.
people. Okay, you know,
Right.
how do you guys decide what new stuff actually gets added into the game?
So I've always got an eye on what players are wearing, what I know we need, what is the mostly worn thing that we just don't have in game that we definitely need to go after, and I'll create a priority list. And I've worked with Clint on it. Clint will also create a priority list. We'll come together on it. We'll agree on things. We might change things. We might do this, and we create a list from top to bottom of here's what we really, really must have. Here's what's, man, this would be really great to get in. And then here's like well, if we get all this in, let's really try and get this in, right? It's almost like a tiered system.
Right. So there've been a lot of things added this year. There's obviously, you guys probably had to make some tough decisions. So let's go ahead and say what's your favorite piece of equipment you got added to this year's game?
I think it's probably most other people's favorite. It's only worn by 10 players in the league, but it's the player exclusive retro. I won't call it out by name other than that, but the player exclusive retro is probably the coolest edition we got in this year that's never been in Madden before.
Okay, so then the counter to that is, what is the one piece of equipment you really wanted to get in the game that you just couldn't, or it just wasn't in the cards to get in for this year?
It was actually probably, for me personally, it was probably the Zenith Epic helmet, which Fletcher Cox wears, because I've seen more players wearing it in training camps this year. They're not wearing the wacky face masks, but it's one of those that would have been nice because you can use the other existing Zenith face mask on it, as the shell is basically the same shape. The NFL rated it the #1 safest helmet out there based on their test, which was another plus that would have been like, wow, maybe we should have got this, But since so few players were wearing it at the time we were doing all this, it was like, well, there's like 8 players in the league wearing this helmet. Are we really going to get our bang for the buck? We added some face masks to the Riddell 360 helmet because we already had the helmet in there, but that's another one that, not a ton of players are wearing it. So it's like, well, do we keep it going forward? We got it in this year. The helmet was already there, so it was like the face masks are relatively a lot easier to get out rather than a helmet. A helmet takes a lot longer to finish because there's so many working pieces in it that are involved. So getting face mask was like, let's just take something that's in there that we needed really to improve upon, and let's just get a nice easy win here.
Yeah, and sometimes it's good to get those easy wins throughout, because I know, and this kind of maybe goes back to the community as a whole, but personally, I'm not much of a gear person. I appreciate the work, I appreciate the nuances of it, but there are people that are just rabid about things such as gear. I mean, the littlest things. These guys just are.
You're talking to one of those exact same people right now, because I started just like those people, sitting out in the community and yelling at the Madden dev team, how did you get this face mask wrong on this guy? What is wrong with you? Do you not watch football? Do you not do this? How do you not see all these things that are going on? And you just screw it up. You just screw it up. You don't spend the time on it. You don't do this. And it was like, wow, these people have got to be so lazy. And they invited me down for community day, and I found out that necessarily wasn't the case. But there was, it didn't hurt to have someone with that kind of passion in the building to help push and drive for us to get better in that area, So that was why I made a big decision to try and come down here and work on this game to help make my weird obsession, like so many others have in the community, something that could be better for all of us to enjoy and make a more authentic game.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was going with that question, because, like I said, it's not something that I really see a bunch and pay a bunch of attention to, but obviously, like you just said, that's something that you really key on. as a player or somebody on the outside looking in. So for you, is that more about just immersing yourself deeper in the game, or is it more of just about obsessive compulsive with things having to be right, or where did that come from really?
It's a little bit of both, but I'm probably going to lead a little bit more towards obsessive compulsive because I have what some people in this building call Rain Man syndrome, or what I would just call a general life problem. Of as I was growing up as a kid, every time I watched football, I would just pay attention to what helmet and face mask a guy was wearing. So like right now, if you ask me any player dating back to probably '89 or after, you just name off a player, I can tell you what helmet and face mask they wear off the top of my head.
You know what? If I would have known that before the show started, we could have had a little game with there. So next time we bring you on, we're definitely gonna have to play guess that helmet face mask combination, because that is definitely a talent I think a lot of people would like to see put to the test. Um,
I freaked out a couple NFL players doing it in person. Like one of my favorite stories is we were out face scanning the Panthers, and Bené Benwickery sits down, and we just get to talking for a minute. And somebody calls out that I know that, and he's like, "Oh, ask me, what do I wear?" I was like, "Oh, Eric's Pete's robot, clear visor." He's like, "Whoa, you said that way too fast." Like he was almost taken aback by it. It was like kind of scary, right? And then started asking me what some of his teammates wore, and he asked me about Roman Harper, and I was like, "Yeah, he wore he shut standard, 3-bar RB, clear visor. He didn't wear the visor in college though." And as soon as I said that, he was like, "Okay, I got to leave. This is freaking me out."
well, it probably made them feel a little bit better, because until you show them that you can do it for other people, they just think you're kind of stalking them. So once you show them you can
Right,
actually do it
right.
with everybody else, it probably makes it feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, it's probably a little less creepy, I guess, at that point, right?
Right. So one of the questions that I put out there for people to send in questions, and a question I got a lot was around mouthpieces and what's really going on with mouth guards.
Oh man, this is one of the fun ones. This is one I'm fighting tooth and nail for every day. I want it in more than anybody else, and the louder the community gets, the more everybody else in this building's like, "What? Why don't we have mouthpieces in?" And then you start looking into it. You see how much it involves. You want to make sure that it doesn't clip into a player's mouth. Now that our mouths move, is it going to have to be set individually per player? And we have like over 600. No, we have like about 800 or so player heads in the game. Are we going to have to individually set it on every player head to make sure that it doesn't clip on that? Because that's a massive task. Is there a way we can automate it? Is there a way we can turn off facial animation if we add it? There's just all these things that you've got to encounter and try and deal with that back in 2005, we didn't have nearly this amount of problems. Everybody's head shape was exactly the same geo, right? So you could make it look different, and the skin color was different, so you thought it was a different player, but a mouthpiece would fit on it the same on all of the heads, so it wasn't a big deal. Well, now that we have all these unique heads with all this unique geo, what's it really going to take to get these to work right while looking good? Are we going to take it out after the play? Like if the player's helmet's off and he's on the sideline, is he going to be chewing on it? Is he going to have it in his mouth? Will we come up with something where it's stuck in the helmet? They just all these potential possibilities that you got to cross from something that seems so small and minor to the end user. That's like, why is this? Why can't you put this in? It seems so easy. Well, I mean, we could potentially go the cheap, small, fast route, but then it wouldn't look good. And it's like, why even spend our time on it if it's not going to look good?
Yeah, and so that's always an interesting kind of position to be in. So one of those things where you guys used to be able to do it, and you really can't now, and the average fan from the outside looking in feels like that's something that you guys took away for no reason. But the reality is your other advancements, add that layer of complexity that makes it tougher. And so, is that frustration ever felt between you and some of the other developers? How you may take 2 steps forward in one place, but you have to take a step back in others, and it seems like people want to harp on the 1 step back rather than the 2 steps forward.
It's a constant battle you've always got to fight, and everybody here's got a different opinion in certain realms and certain reasons. But we're always trying to find a way, because there's a lot of very smart and talented people here. There's always trying to find a way to be incredibly tactical and balanced on your approach when you're going to take on something like that, so that you can make sure that you consider all of the things that could or couldn't affect. That way, let's say we start to go change something in the next coming years, like change something completely about the way we make heads or whatever, right? Well, since we don't have mouthpieces now, maybe it's not, remembered that you need to set up something for mouthpieces. Whereas if we already had it, if we get it in soon and then that process changes, somebody in that room while talking about that process is like, well, yeah, how does it handle mouthpieces? How does it handle this? So it's not, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not something we can't do. It's just something we have to figure out how to do.
And that, in the programming world, and I've got some experience in myself, it always seems that nothing's impossible. It's just finding the best path there is.
In the gaming world, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Nothing is impossible. It's time, it's money, it's labor, it's and how much time you feel you can really dedicate to it to get the product that you're trying to achieve.
One last thing here to kind of wrap up the equipment thing, and we can move on to some other topics here, but so you guys can constantly be scanning and improving. Is the plan to keep adding new equipment, new things throughout the season as far as that goes, or is it more going to be next release you're going to look to probably bring in the next round if there is going to be another round?
At this point in time, we do not have the ability to patch in equipment due to how our database currently functions. It doesn't mean that that's not somewhere where we'd like to go in the future, but as of right now, patching in equipment is, to my knowledge, completely off the table, at least for 17. Now, it's something some people here would like to have. So I wouldn't rule it out going in the future, but I'm not going to say it's also going to happen in 18 because I definitely can't say that.
Right.
So at this point, we don't even know if we can get more equipment next year. We have lots of other things we've got to look at and explore. So I can't sit here and say, yeah, we're going to get new equipment next year. We're going to get new equipment the year after that. You can't say that because anything can change at any point in time. So it's always tough when somebody asks you about, well, what's happening next year? Well, everybody in here is talking about next year, but nothing's ever completely finalized till you're really there. So anything can change, anything can happen. So there's no point in ever talking about next year, especially when 17's not even out yet.
Exactly. So, okay, so equipment is one key piece to that, and I think the next thing that has really moved it along has been the face scanning. I want to talk a little bit about that process. So how do you guys go about doing that process? I think I've seen some tweets from you saying, you kind of did a tour. Do you pack up and go to each training camp? How do you go about trying to get as many people as possible into the game?
So this year we went to the Combine. I was not at that trip, so I can't say but a couple of our people went to the Combine, and we're trying to get that consistently down the road so that we're getting everybody at the Combine so that we don't have to make nearly as many trips to all the teams, which can get, obviously costly for us traveling, moving all the equipment, staying there for a couple days, food, all the standard expenses that come with that. And then try and, convince a veteran player who doesn't even really care to come sit down with you for nothing, basically, other than the fact that, hey, man, you want your head in Madden. Hopefully you think that's cool. So, not everybody cares about that. Not every player really, gives a crap. So when you go to the Combine, a lot of young players play Madden. They really care. They're going to want to sit down there. So that's how we're trying to go at it in the future. Doesn't mean we won't go to teams in the future, but that's our general approach right now. What we do is we'll take like a couple people, and we have our little rig set up. They sit down. About 2 minutes later, you'll take a front picture, a side left, a side right, and then they're done. We've really got it streamlined down so that it moves relatively quick, and they sit down, they do nothing, they leave. They're as soon as they're like, wow, that's it. It's a pretty neat little thing.
You guys go on site and you get there, and do you just do an open casting call? Hey, who wants to be in it? Or do you guys kind of know who you're trying to get? I mean, are you just trying to get anybody who's not on there, or are you going after the big stars that still aren't in there? Or do you guys normally have like a procedure?
We always try and get everybody we can. There's no point, because you never know if a star can break out. Like, you always go and get everybody that wants to do it. Like this year at the Combine, I was told we only missed 2 people. Now that doesn't mean just because your head got scanned that you're going to be in game, but we have that scan available to us now, and if we choose to add it, it's there and ready, right? So you still have to, again, prioritize time, all that, resources, so that you can make sure, well, let's pick the guys we really want and choose a cutoff line based on what we have available to us for time and resources, and then that's what's going to get in for this year, right?
You touched on it a little bit about some people just not caring or wanting to be in it. Is it a common occurrence where the veteran guys are just like, I really don't have time for that? Do you ever get the younger guys kind of jabbing them, trying to coax them into doing it, or how's that process? I mean, are you guys well received normally?
Yeah, I'd say the majority of the time we're well received. I've heard some stories about guys being like, I don't care and this and that, and I won't name out any names or anything, but it's for some people it's just not for them. Other people it's wow, this is amazing. And I believe I've heard some stories about younger guys ribbing the older guys that did it, and they have end up coming back and getting scanned from time to time. It's in that regard, though, it just makes so much more sense now to just go to the combine. Now, in my instances, I went to the Panthers and the Cowboys last year. Cowboys were incredibly gracious. They let everybody that was there come to us. I think we only missed Rolando McClain, who wasn't there, Des Bryant, who wasn't there because of his contract at the time, and Mo Claiborne. But we got everybody else. So they made it a mandatory stop on their tour, and the Combine did the same thing for us this year. They made it a mandatory stop. Hey, go get your head scanned. It's the last thing you do, and then you can leave.
That's pretty cool, and that's a good way, like you said, playing towards the future. Whether you're going to use it or not, it's good to have that. You never know when a guy who may not even practice squad player, but down the road emerges, and you guys already got him. So good planning there.
I mean, it's that easy. It's like, well, holy crap, this guy busted out. Do we got his head scan? Oh, we sure do. Well, let's put him in next year. All right.
So along that lines, obviously, you guys have the head scans in for coaches, most of them. And so,
well, speaking of that, we did get one more this year that I don't know if everybody's seen.
I believe
it's not Bill Belichick.
Sean Payton, right?
Sean Payton is a new addition this year. I've seen people asking about it. I guess there may not be some Saints videos out there, but Sean Payton is a new addition this year, back in Madden, if you will.
So, and the coaches are interesting, right? And so part of your blog today, you guys kind of showed some comparisons of the way that you're outfitting the coaches this year versus how you've done it in the past, and how you've made more of an effort to really develop the coaches themselves as well. And is that due to more of the focus that this year's game is going to have on the coaches' interaction during the game?
It's more us just wanting to be more and more authentic. With Nike changing their apparel all the time, and us having a really good partnership with Nike now, it's like, well, let's see if we can get ahead of the game. So we contacted them. They sent us some stuff, and we've got 2016 apparel that has yet to really be seen already on the coaches and ready in the game. So it's kind of something we also did with the equipment. We're like, hey, send us this year, upcoming year stuff if you can, and we'll get it in game. That way we're already accurate.
Does that stuff ever disappear out of the EA
no,
offices?
all these companies always ask for it back. So it's not something where we're like, cool, we get to keep. It's rare that they'll be like, oh, well, no big deal. Pretty much all the time they're like, all right, well, that was prototype stuff, so send it back, please.
Well, that's unfortunate. That would have been a nice little perk there for you.
We get plenty other cool perks. I'm very happy working here, and we get a lot of cool stuff.
Great. Let's talk about the stadiums. The stadiums always tend to be kind of a slight change here or there. How do you guys keep up with that? Is that more of community pointing out? Do you have people take pictures and send it to you? But something as easy as the wall skirting, a quick change, and you guys are kind of left a year behind without even realizing it.
This is another thing that I'm weirdly OCD about. I can usually tell from watching a game, and I watch about 16 games a week. I can usually tell from watching a game, wow, that's not what it was last year. It's not what it is in Madden. All right, I'm going to go mark that down on Monday. and I'm going to put it in so we can take care of that, and for next year's game, right? Um, just something I just pay a ton of attention to. That doesn't mean community feedback doesn't help, right? Like they'll call out things that maybe I haven't seen. Won't say that happens often, but hey, it happens. Nobody's perfect. I like to try to be, but nobody's perfect. So there was a nice little thread on Operation Sports this year calling out some stuff that we got around to fixing, which is awesome. Some renovation stuff for the Bills. There was a new building built outside the Seahawks stadium that we added in. There was quite a few stadium updates that needed to be made that a lot of people called out on the forums that definitely made it in. There were two in particular that I'm still getting bothered about, and they unfortunately involve a lot more than just somebody from stadium working on it, since when you flip the field, our cameras for presentation are built into it. So, and that was Patriots and MetLife having the MetLife has the team on the wrong side of the sideline. It should be at the top of the NFL logo, and the Patriots midfield logo is facing the wrong way. Well, the way our system's set up, if we flip that, then the logo would be upside down, and the camera pans for all the presentation shots, which would not really be a good look. It's not something that we that we can't fix. It's just time, resources, making sure everybody, hey, presentation, you got to spend all this time working on your cameras and all this. Hopefully you got that time allotted out in the budget. All those kinds of things. So it's not that we can't fix everything. We can. It's always a 1 year every year the game comes out, you got to prioritize what's going to be best for us. What should we attack? So we attacked a very, very strong amount of it. And next year, whatever changes we've still got to make, we're going to try and attack as well. So it's a yearly process that you got to stay on.
One thing I've always kind of wondered about is how you guys go about doing some of the stadiums that are set to open. The Falcon Stadium, the Viking Stadium, that kind of stuff. You guys, I think last year or 2 years ago with the 49er Stadium, Levi, you guys had it open, and if you did a franchise in year 2, I think it was. How do you guys get ahead of those stadiums? Are you going off of pictures? Does somebody go and take a look, or drawings? Or how do you get a stadium that's really not even done yet into the game?
This is probably hopefully the only question I get like this. I probably am not allowed to give you the answer for that one.
All right. Well, everybody's got to have secrets.
Yes, and we're no slouch in that.
Okay.
But we work very closely with our partners, and sometimes we get some things that help us. So.
Okay. Well, and so I think that gives a good look at some of the different aspects of the game that is more about letting you get immersed into it. And so we hit on a lot of the main features, and so that will pretty much wrap up this segment. And that'll wrap up part 1 of our interview with Dustin Smith, developer from EA. Make sure you tune in for the next episode where we'll go over ratings with Dustin as we talk about different things that really impact the overall and general aspects of rating. Make sure you follow along to @BomberLeague for more information, as well as @T4Verts, and subscribe here on NBL Network. For all of us here at the 4Verts Podcast, thanks and have a good night.